We're live. How's everyone doing today? I know that the stream information is incorrect, but my little widget in OBS isn't updating, so I'd have to go to Twitch to update it manually. That seems like a whole lot of work for me. I mean, we're going to try it, but... Oh yeah, this title is very out of date. And... Oh boy, watching my face, like, with a 10-second delay is real weird. Alright, well, we fixed that, and now we can hide that forever, so I don't have to see my face talking to me slower. I have enough of that going on here. So, as always, folks have questions, throw them in chat. More than happy to go on tangents. These last few lessons are a little bit less structured and regimented. And so it's much easier to go on tangents. And these sections are also much broader than others, talking about philosophy of mentorship, talking about philosophy of feedback, and like ideas behind running effective tournaments. Those are all things that I could talk about for many hours. And so tangents are great because it lets me get things that I just didn't put into the lessons into the broadcast. This is RoboJoe says we have to watch your face all the time. I can't control that. That's a choice you made. And, like, you don't have to watch your face all the time. So, it's the watching of one's own face, particularly when, we're on tangent, we're just on chatting tangent time, rather than talking about lesson time. I don't know if you've ever had to do announcements over a PA system that has, like, a 2 to 5 second lag time. So you say something, and by the time you're halfway through the sentence, you start hearing the beginning of your sentence. That throws you so hard. Cascade2244 says, booze, I've been drinking tonight. Give me insight into what you drink when you decide to. My favorite drinks in order. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, okay, so my 5 favorite drinks, not in order, because I don't have the order. We got water, we got grape juice, we got root beer, we got Sprite, we got hot chocolate. Anything outside of those 5s, when I drink alcohol, which is once every couple of years, I don't drink that much, and I don't know why. It just doesn't work for me. It doesn't do anything for me. It's usually some scotch. I have a bottle of Cardew running around somewhere, Macallan 12 or Macallan 18 floating around. But yeah, I generally prefer, if you're like, would you like scotch, hot chocolate, or grape juice? I'd be like, that's a tough call. Is it warm out? Grape juice. Is it cold out? Hot chocolate. But, alright, Headkin says, prediction for Galactic Championship, Yoda Red from the top rope piloted by a completely unknown person. Alright, I mean, I just want to see, one of those weird, funky leaders it doesn't even have to make top 8. I would love to see, a Revan, Anakin, or Palpatine make top 8. That'd be sick. Seeing a starter deck leader make top 8 would be incredible. Just any of the pre-con deck leaders would be very cool to see. You know what? No. I want to see Boba Fett Daimyo make top 8. Just to have another dominance of a Boba and make people upset. If we can just get another Fett family member banned, that would bring me undue amounts of joy. So, let's get into today's lesson. Today's lesson is about mentorship. Unless folks have more questions, but mentorship is, as I mentioned in the lesson itself, something that's very important to me. Because, what I am doing professionally is mentoring all of y'all. I'm not mentoring you as personally as I would like. I'd like to sit down and have like a solid 1 to 6 hour conversation with each and every one of you. But also, I updated the stats yesterday, and if I held myself to just certified L1s and did that full time, that would be, and gave each person an hour, that'd be 4 months of work. Let's call it 3 hours, to be fair. Yeah, 3 is that's close to a year if we get like the level of personal mentorship that I want to put in. But instead, I'm going to make these lessons and hope that carries through. I'm going to talk to people at events. I'm going to try and write more reviews. But before I talk more about why I care so much about mentorship, mentorship is not just feedback. It's long-term guidance and development. The part of mentorship is not just giving somebody feedback, being like, hey, you did great this weekend. Mentorship is working with somebody to make them the best judge that the two of you can get them to be. And I think that's very cool. It's how I got to where I am. I would not be where I was if folks hadn't spent time and energy to provide extensive amounts of mentorship to me. There are multiple people who have probably put in 10 or 15 hours. A couple who've probably put in 20 or 30 hours to just making me better. And at least one who's put in, 100, 200 hours into making me a better judge. It did help that we would just, go on road trips to events, and it's like, yep, we're driving from Massachusetts to Maryland. It's going to be 8 hours unless there's traffic, in which case it's going to be 10. And then it's another 10 on the trip back. Let's just talk about policy for 20 hours. Or talk about program construction. Let's talk about leadership. Let's talk about logistics. I want every judge in the program to have that relationship with somebody. That's not possible, I know, because a lot of folks are going to be in more remote areas. They're going to be the only judge for in any direction for an hour or 2 hours or 5 hours or 10 hours if they're in Alaska. And so you're not necessarily going to have that network of somebody who can work with you every day all the time. Now, the internet does make it a lot easier to find a mentor and just chat with somebody online and have some of that relationship. I do think that as somebody who has a lot of primarily digital friendships, I do think the in-person aspect of mentorship does add a lot. But one of the things that I really want to do, and I will probably do after Galactics, and my life has calmed down a wee little bit, just a scotch, is fire up a SWOTOR guild for Star Wars Unlimited judges and just be like, yep, this is where we hang out, and this is just a place for nerds to hang out and be nerds, but also talk about judging just in a casual setting. Just be like, hey, yeah, I had this really weird interaction last night at F&M. Just essentially another general chat, but also I can play a video game while I'm in general chat and I don't have to alt tab for it. I think that sort of thing is incredibly valuable. And then while you're in a raid or doing a dungeon in voice chat with them, it's very easy to just have real conversations about what people are working on, talking about mentorship styles, talking about policy. Headkin says cough, Judge League cough. Yep, that's something that I want to do. And want to figure out the logistics to do it reasonably. And I think the plan is to do it. There isn't a plan to do it. I want to do it for Secrets of Power. I have some ideas for it, but I want to run them by Tim before I announce them to anybody. As soon as I have the formal go ahead, or a more formal go ahead, I'm gonna just start talking to y'all about it. What else is there? Oh, right, we're just talking about mentorship. Creating spaces where people can play casually and just chat casually and naturally is very valuable. Discord is a very powerful tool. Discord also has 3,500 people in it, and so it's very... I know a bunch of people have threads and conversations in DMs off to the side, but I'd like to create some... I would like to see some smaller spaces created. I might create some of them, see also that guild, but also people are totally able to make their own. Henkin says the difficulty would be platform, referring to Judge League. Yeah, so there are some unlicensed digital platforms that are possible options. I think another part is... So one of my ideas is that it's essentially just like a perpetually running thing, and you can just join. Once we get it started, you can join whenever you want. And having a way to just play with people in person, I think that's more valuable. There are platforms dedicated to playing paper TCGs through the internet, where you just set up your webcam pointed down at your desk, or have your webcam pointed at you, and you take your phone and you get some terrible cardboard contraption. You just get a bunch of empty booster boxes and deck boxes, and then put some more on top of your phone, and so you just have your phone cantilevered out over your desk, and then you just hook that into your PC, or Bluetooth it in or whatever, and it streams the gameplay from your phone and your face from your webcam. And then you can actually play with real cardboard. It does make it really hard when somebody's like, can I traitorous your unit? And you're like, sure, let me express mail it to you. It'll be there in 3 days. Also, can you ship me $4 for shipping? And ship it back when the game's over. That doesn't really work great. Play by post or play by mail doesn't really work, just sending emails. So yeah, figuring out platform is something, but creating more community spaces is something that I want to do, because more community leads to more mentorship. Mentorship is not for everybody, but I do think it is a good fit for most enfranchised judges. There is a concept that I want to talk about that I didn't really cover in the lesson, which is training your own replacement. That's something that's really scary to do, and I know that several judges have already felt hindered by their mentoring. So what I mean is, in the October wave, there are some judges who went to various stores, were head judges for planetary qualifiers in the Shadows of the Galaxy PQ wave, worked with judge candidates, and at the time nobody was L1, but some apprentices, with some people who were interested in becoming judges at those local game stores who were local to the area. And when the Twilight of the Republic or Jump to Lightspeed PQs came out, the person who did the mentoring didn't get the head judge job because it went to the local that they trained up. And so, from a certain perspective, training your replacement is a bad thing, because it means that you are replaceable, and therefore you don't get to work as many events. And that is truly unfortunate. However, I do think that the community is richer as a whole when we do mentor each other. And these positions or these times when individuals don't get opportunities because they train somebody up are much, much fewer than the number of times where the experienced judge, the mentor, is like, hey, I'm going to a large event. I'm not going to be available for the PQ. There were a bunch of people who did PQs for Shadows of the Galaxy and Twilight of the Republic, and maybe a couple in Jump to Lightspeed, and they weren't available for their local store's planetary qualifier because they were traveling to Minneapolis or Richmond for sectors and regionals. And so the store was like, hey, where do we go when you're not available? And sometimes it's not you have another large event. It's sometimes you have a wedding or you have something to do with your kids or your family. You feel sick or otherwise unavailable. And it is to the benefit of the community as a whole to have somebody who can cover for you when you're not available. Furthermore, that person, like, if you maintain a good relationship with your mentee, when they replace you, especially if it is a longer term mentorship, especially if it's not you worked one event and now you're there, or now they've taken over your job, but if it's somebody you've worked with for 6 months or a year or 2 years, if they start getting advanced past you, they're gonna start mentoring you now. They'll be like, oh yeah, I can use my connections, I can like teach you the things that I am learning. Because as I mentioned, the true foundation of a good mentorship relationship is a friendship between the two of you. Liking the other person is super valuable. And then when it gets to the point where they have advanced past you, when the student has become the master, they can, instead of striking you down, help you also be elevated. And that's something that I've seen many, many times, where somebody comes in who is just on fire. They get great mentorship. They get great support and networking from their locals. And then they get all of these roles, and they're like, oh, hey, my local judges should also come with me. For example, like, let's say you get mentored by judges who've been running planetary qualifiers, and then you get accepted to sectors, do exceptionally well there, and you start getting leadership roles. You're like, hey, can I recommend all of these L1s who taught me how to be a judge in the first place? I think they're very talented, very skilled people. They taught me a lot of what I know. Can we bring them on? And so mentorship is a little bit about networking. Mightstone12420 says SWTOR God is hates autocorrect. Yeah, everybody hates autocorrect. What server for SWTOR? I don't know. I have not looked into it. I've not looked into SWTOR in like 8 years, maybe longer. So like, I don't even know what you get at free to play versus the paid subscription, and like how much expansions are. If somebody else wants to do it, great, please feel free. I'm not going to be able to look into it until August at least. I got this thing called Galactic Championships, and this other thing called L2 exams, and this other thing called L1 updates. And those are stealing my attention. Once those are done, I have a bunch of other work that I need to do, and we'll get there. We'll get there. At some point, we'll play some games. Yeah, if you want to look into it, please feel free. Invite folks to a guild or something. And I don't know what. That's the question. What class do I start with? God, SWTOR, such a fun game. Right, on topic. We're on topic. So, when I talk about mentorship, there are a couple of ways to get into mentorship. I think I'm just going to jump to the section in the lesson, just start teaching. If you're interested in becoming a mentor, if you're interested in growing candidates or growing yourself, just start doing it. Go to your local store and say, hey, anybody want to learn the rules better? A lot of people aren't going to proactively go to Nexus, learn the rules, take the exams. A lot of people, even if they do go to Nexus and are interested and are proactive about it, will struggle with the lessons that I put out because, frankly, just like video recordings, like PowerPoints with voiceover and text-based lessons, they are very far from the pinnacle of education. And even then, digital education platforms, even the best digital education platforms, aren't ideal for everybody. A lot of people learn better from a real human interacting with them. And so there might be people in your store who are like, yeah, I've heard of judging, but I don't know how to get into it. Or I've heard of judging and I've been to Nexus and Jonah is a terrible, like, layout designer and I don't know where anything is. Jonah's aware of that. Or I've been to Nexus, I found the lessons, and I just couldn't get engaged with them. Like, I tried listening to them on walks. I tried watching them. Cannot pay attention. Are you able to help me? Can you explain to me modified actions and nested abilities? Or can you explain to me how Crate Dragon works? And sometimes having a person explain it, being able to manipulate physical cards, which I can't do through the internet very easily. Hedkin says, yeah, me doing courses on Udemy to try and upskill versus having an actual instructor. Yeah, Mightstone12420 says some people learn best by arguing with McFerguson on Discord. So some people do learn best from arguing with McFerguson on Discord. Some people just learn best by having somebody challenge them, right? Which is McFerguson on Discord or several other people. But that might be how you learn best as a mentor. One of the things that has made me a better Star Wars judge and a better judge for other games as well is teaching the game to people. I mean, the number of times I'm doing a rules or policy lesson and I'm doing the live broadcast and somebody says, hey, I have a question. And then I react and there's a GIF now on the Discord and I'm about to, God, I can feel the muscles just wanting to like facepalm. And those questions make me a better judge because now I can explain exactly how and why Rey Yoda works. And that's entirely because I don't know how long the argument was. It was in DM, so I could check the timestamps. But I had a 15 or 20 minute, not argument, but conversation and challenging of each other's beliefs and understandings. It wasn't like, you're stupid, you're wrong. It was, that's not my interpretation of this. Wouldn't that mean that this works like this? What about this section in the CR? And with peers, super valuable. With people who don't know the rules and are just like, that doesn't make sense to me. That is not intuitive to me. I need you to explain to me in a different way. That makes you challenge the rules on a deeper level. And so being able to argue rules or teach rules is going to make you so much better at judging. Because then when a player says, are you sure that's how that worked? You can be like, oh honey, yes, I'm sure. McFerguson says, I absolutely started arguing the rules so I can learn them better. Yep, 100%. And Hedkin says, I'm also guilty of abusing Cunningham's law of just posting something wrong to get the right answer. This is my excuse and I'm sticking to it. Yeah, any typo you find in a lesson, that's just to see how closely you were reading the lesson. Yeah, that's it. But mentoring people is the way to learn. Like, I had read the comprehensive rules several times and played, I don't know how many games, before I started writing the lessons. Writing the lessons, and therefore needing to be able to explain how triggers work to somebody who fundamentally does not know how triggers work, means that I have to break it down into its component pieces and think about it in different ways. Wolfstrider562 says, being able to have a conversation with someone to get to different points of view and getting a better understanding of the rules we may see different, and not just saying, no, you were wrong, end of conversation. Yeah. I mean, this happens a lot with policy, more so than rules, I think. Like, with rules, definitely, I've had some conversations with people where it ends up, where, like, I have this one opinion, you have this one opinion, both of these opinions cannot be correct. Let's go get a clarification. But with policy, this is how I would interpret this policy. This is how I would enforce this. There was a question for the Galactic Championships, actually. Somebody posted it on Reddit. They haven't asked judges directly yet. But they're wearing a very nice Mandalorian helmet, and they're like, hey, would I be able to wear this at Galactics? As far as I can tell, there's no rule against wearing a Mandalorian helmet while playing the game. And there is no rule against wearing a Mandalorian helmet while playing the game. There's also no rule against a dog playing the game, other than you need to be able to effectively play the game and communicate with your opponent. For the helmet, I'm very curious I don't have my Mandalorian helmet on hand. Otherwise, I'd just be like, plop it on and be like, okay, would you allow somebody to play in a high-level competitive event wearing a Mandalorian helmet that completely obscures their face? And I'm curious to see what folks in chat say. If you've seen my answer in the Discord about Galactic Championships, ignore that and just tell me what you thought. And if you haven't seen it, I'm curious to know what you thought. Fellfox Hound says, looks like I missed a bunch. Oh, is that because we're talking about Airbud Star Wars Unlimited Edition? Who knows? Look, we're very good at going on tangents that I want to go on, and also going on a bunch of tangents that I wasn't planning on going on. But, yeah. I'm curious. Before I talk about how I would have handled this helmet thing, I'm interested in asking about what y'all would do. And if nobody has an answer, that's also perfectly fine. But this is one of those things where there's no policy that says you can't. In fact, there's no policy that regards it at all, directly at least. And so Wolfstar562 says, I feel the helmet would be hard to do as it would cause more of an echo in your own ears and can make it hard to hear someone talking with the helmet. Yeah, absolutely. That's a real concern that I had considered. You would be muffled because, helmet is blocking you. Just communication is a real concern. And having a conversation with somebody. McFerguson says policy covers hygiene, so is the helmet super stinky? Maybe the helmet, like if the person shows up wearing a hazmat suit and it keeps malodor in, that's in favor of wearing hazmat suits. Maybe the helmet's doing a good thing with air purification systems. Headkin says, I would see communication issues. It can also be an issue with maybe giving away hidden information. Yep, the visors are known to be very reflective, and so if you're just holding your cards here and your opponent can be like, oh, I see that they have an adventure in play. That seems not great. This is Robo Joe says it could be socially intimidating. Yeah, having somebody sit down in full God, can you imagine if somebody shows up in a full metal Beskar suit of Mandalorian armor with a force pike strapped to their back, and they're like, hey, I'm here to play some Star Wars Unlimited. And then they just slap down the most competitive, Mick Ferguson says that would be so cool. Oh, 100% super, super cool. Also, if they were as stoic as Pedro Pascal, I would not have a great time. And so, Wolfstar says, what if they have an earbud in and no one can know? They could be getting information from someone else. Too many what ifs. Yep. I wouldn't allow it at something like Galactics. I wouldn't allow it at sectors or regionals either. There was somebody at sectors in both Milan and Liverpool, I think, who did have a full set of Mandalorian armor, and they kept the helmet under their arm walking around generally, and put it off to the side during their matches. They weren't wearing the helmet during their matches. And there was another person in, I want to say, Richmond and Minneapolis, who, again, Mandalorian armor, and they also had a little baby Grogu in, a little pouch, which, adorable, love it. But, again, this isn't somebody could very fairly argue, another judge or a player could very fairly argue, this is not against the rules. There's no policy that says this is not allowed, so I would allow it, period. McFerguson says, counter to the what ifs, does someone with hearing aids get this level of scrutiny? Frankly, generally not. Like, something that I will give permission for, somebody comes up to me and they're like, hey, I very easily get overwhelmed by the noise of convention centers. Can I wear earbuds or earphones that are plugged into my phone and just play some white noise or some music? And I'm like, yeah, what are you going to listen to? You don't even need to show me the tracks, just tell me what it is. There are a lot of accessibility aids and things that we can do to allow players to have a smoother experience that could also be taken advantage of. The number of people who ask for permission to wear earbuds during an event, it's like 1 per 1,000 players, so I expect fewer than 3 people at Galactics to be like, hey, can I wear earbuds? And essentially I'm going to, no questions asked, say yes. Because it is in many ways inappropriate to be like, you need to prove that you will not be able to play in this event with, like, that's just not an appropriate thing for me to be doing. Just being like, hey, yeah, you're going to be listening to music or white noise, cool, like, show me the tracks. Or we might have somebody check in at some point and just be like, hey, can you just show me what you're listening to? Just as like a verification of authenticity, sort of like the deck checks, like, we trust you, but we're going to verify and demonstrate to your opponents as well that, like, this isn't just somebody who's like, oh yeah, the head judge said that I could have, like, my buddies talking to me in my ear and it's entirely fine. Technology is definitely going to be something that policy is going to struggle to keep up with as it continues to advance, but McFerguson says, my wife has anxiety and migraines and the loops really help her out. Yeah, like, there's so much technology that makes life better for people that could be used maliciously. And if somebody says, hey, this makes life better for me and I'm not going to use it maliciously, I'm just going to give them the big old thumbs up and get them to play, because my job is to make sure people have a good time playing. And if during the course of the event I find out that they were lying to me, they're just 100% gone very easily. And the premeditated nature of it does not bode well for their long-term health in the game. And it's the sort of thing that is relatively easy to check out. Just be like, hey, you mind handing me your head, like, what are you listening to? Cool. This is somebody just being like, your opponent currently has an event in hand. I'm like, cool, that's not music or white noise. The door's over there. I was going to point over there. There isn't a door over there, so I need to point in a real direction for a real door. Anyways, back to mentorship. Conversations about policy, like just talking to other judges, is very helpful. Talking to people who will challenge you, even more helpful, because if everybody just agrees with you, you're not going to learn as much. And new judges and folks who are coming to policy for the first time are going to be more likely to challenge you than other folks. I know that something that I've experienced a lot is a lot of folks are very comfortable with rules. And so when I say something in rules, they're like, yep, got it, I agree, that is the rule. When I say something about policy, there are a lot of folks who are newer to policy, and I'm challenged a lot more on policy because people don't understand it as much. It's not that they don't believe me, it's that they don't understand why it is the way it is or how it all connects. And so they're like, hey, can you explain that again? Can you explain why it's this and not that? And so policy is a great place to learn. So how do you just dive right in? Well, you can just go into your local game store during weekly play and be like, hey, after weekly play, I'm going to stick around for a half hour. If anybody is interested in becoming a judge, find that time, come chat with me, and we can talk about what it takes to become a judge. And you can just be like, I'm going to just have one-on-one conversations with anybody interested and talk about the process. You can be like, I'm just going to like sit in the game store a half hour before or a half hour before or an hour before and like go through one of the lessons on Nexus and just like turn off the audio. We don't need to listen to Jonah. I'm going to explain it to you. You can ask me questions and you can get real in-person mentorship without you actually having to like create the lessons, because creating the lessons in the syllabus takes a fair amount of time. please feel free to steal my work to teach other people. Like that, it's not stealing. I'm graciously giving it to you. It is there to be used. And so if you want to just like run judge classes, that's something that I love doing as a judge. Just getting a couple of people, talking to them about rules like every week before weekly play. I think back in my old store, way back in the day, it was like Monday nights, right, like possibly at the same time as like Monday night drafting, and people would just be like, okay, I could choose to either play the game or learn about the rules. I'm going to go learn about the rules. You can also just like talk to people while playing individual games and be like, hey, any interest in becoming a judge? Don't push it on them. You don't have to be a door-to-door salesman for Star Wars Unlimited judge program. But if somebody's like, if you have somebody in your store who is another rules nerd and they're the one who always asks you the weird questions, you'd be like, instead of asking me how this works every week, what if I just taught you all of the rules instead of the ones you asked me about? And you can just start that way. You could also just start with like what interests them. They might be trying to do weird things. Like there was a question that was in one of the channels yesterday. I think it was, or this week. Time is a social construct. I think it was L1, but it might have been elsewhere, which is, what is the greatest number of attacks you can take in a single turn? Like in a single action, effectively. And that, I know, that definitely scratched the brain in the right place for a number of judges. And if you bring that question to your local player community, there are definitely going to be some players who are like, oh boy, Star Wars Unlimited is not supposed to, like, isn't really a combo game, right? A lot of Star Wars Unlimited is I do a thing, you do a thing, I do a thing, you do a thing. Sometimes it's I Rebel Assault and I do two whole things in a row. And it's very easy to be like, okay, I Rebel Assault attack with Ezra and something else. Ezra reveals another Rebel Assault, and then I attack with two more things, and so that's one action, 4 attacks. Okay, how can I get that more? Okay, what if I had clones of Ezra? Okay. And so that might just set somebody's brain off, and then you can start having a discussion about the rules around that, talking about the Admiral Mahdi Sandhill, I think it's Trench is the last one. Like, that's another great conversation starter for somebody who's just like one of those Johnny Jenny types who's just like, I want to play combo decks in a game that's not designed for combo decks. Hedkin says, I just want game actions the deck. Oh boy, yeah. McFerguson, there's been a couple of times where resolving multiple layers of nested triggers made my opponent's eyes glaze over, lol. I mean, have you considered playing an Ezra U-Wing deck? Because we do have guidance from the rules clarifications that you're very familiar with. Wolfstrider 562 says new Kylo leader with upgrades. Oh boy, yeah. With like snapshot reflexes, creating attacks while you're resolving the when played of Kylo. It's wild. McFerguson says very loudly, my favorite clarification. It might be my favorite clarification. There's another one or two sassy moments from our good friend the Rules Admiral that I also adore. McFerguson, have you met Ryan before? We're getting a little personal here, but I'm pretty sure Ryan, like 99% sure Ryan's going to be at Galactics. I know you're going to be at Galactics, and if the two of you haven't met, oh boy, I'm just going to let them all know where you are at all times so that they can either avoid you or seek you out as they see fit. Because I think a bunch of them are going to seek you out and just be like, you and I, we have words. When I went into the office the first time, a bunch of people came by and were like, oh, you're Jonah. Because they knew my name from things that were sent into the office and like questions that went around. There's some names out from the judge community that people know who they are. Mostly, and I think it's generally a tip of the hat from like one night to another being like, that was a good blow. Not like, oh my god, they sent in another question, we're so angry, but it's, ooh, that's, we should have an answer for that. That is, in fact, a good question. McFerguson says, I identify as a problem. Oh, yeah. That's... You should also identify... Judges should generally identify as solutions, not problems. But, one of the... Something that I told my former boss is that if I don't create problems, how can I then demonstrate my efficacy at solving problems? So really you want to be a mix of the two. You create the problems subtly and solve the problems dramatically. Don't do that. Don't create problems for other people. Like, that's actually not a good thing to do. That part's a joke. Just solve problems. Being a problem solver is nice. So, back to mentorship. Just start reaching out. Start running judge classes. Just see if somebody in your local scene wants to become a judge. Reach out to the local stores in your area that you know run Star Wars Unlimited and be like, hey, do you have anybody in your store or in your community? Like, I'm not able to make it out to weekly play because I have weekly play in my store, but like if they're ever in the store at another time, or like pre-release weekend, if they have pre-releases at different times, I could come in, meet the person, and start mentoring somebody in your store to become a judge, so that we can both have judges around everywhere. So, like, you don't have to just restrain yourself to your store. You can also go to Discord and be like, or, like, go on to Nexus and look for folks, like, as an L1, you can look for apprentices in your state or region and be like, oh, hey, I see there are a bunch of judges in Texas who are apprentices. A couple of you are in my city. Do you want to ever get like, I'm inviting all of the judges, just do a draft some weeknight or some weekend, talk about judging. I can see what I can do to help. Similarly, like L2s, when we have them, look at L1s and be like, hey, are you interested in going for L2? Let's talk about that. One of the reasons we're talking about mentorship so much is there is that advanced role for level 2 judges, which is the L1 mentor role, the L1 endorser role. As I was saying earlier, I want every judge to have a connection to other judges, to be a part of the community, and having a strong mentorship relationship with another judge means that that's much more likely. Something that I don't love, that's probably happening a fair amount now, is somebody goes to a store, they're like, hey, I'd like to be certified. They get their endorsement, and then they never really talk with any other judges, and so they're not getting layered feedback, they're not getting like best practices from other judges, they're not getting evaluation of where they are or coaching on things that they can do to improve. And it makes me a little disappointed that I know that some people are going to be missing out on that. However, some people are also just like, look, I just wanted to know the rules so that I can make weekly play a little bit smoother, and I don't need more than that. I don't need this extensive mentorship. I think it's very valuable, but it's not necessary. Level 2 judges, since you're going to be mentoring level 1 candidates to level 1, having these tools and ideas of how to get somebody to advance is super valuable. And there's just so much to talk about in providing feedback. I think one of the most powerful things you can do is figure out why somebody is good at the things that they're good at. So figure out, like, looking at me, because I don't want to pick apart anybody in chat. One of the things that I like to think I'm good at is mentoring. Why am I good at mentoring? Part of it is because I enjoy people as puzzles, right? I enjoy looking at a person or interacting with a person, being like, okay, what makes you think? How do you think? How can we change how you think? And it's like, for me, understanding, oh, this person is going to struggle with rules because, like, they're a very soft skills oriented person. or social skills oriented person. Like, if you want them to issue disqualification, they will get the player thanking them by the end of the conversation for disqualifying them, and the person will just fess up to it immediately. They can de-escalate anything. They know how to interact with people incredibly well, but the rules just don't make sense for them because they're coming from so many other game systems and they just don't have time to play as many games. Okay, how can we handle this? Well, we can start like finding parallels between like genuinely between social interactions and rules. We can figure out ways to get them to play more, or I can study up the game systems that they know and say, okay, triggers work the same. They're just identical to how they work in the game that you're already familiar with, so don't worry about triggers. You don't have to learn triggers anymore. And they're like, oh, cool, I don't have to learn that. And that makes their life easier because they're like, I'm just overwhelmed by all this information. But if you cut away half of it saying, I already know how it works, great, I'm going to cut away half of it because I already know how it works, and now I have way less to work with, and we can break it down into each thing, and I can be like, okay, let's talk about this one thing. Let's talk about nested actions and or nested abilities and modified actions. And that's two things. Let's break it down into nested abilities and modified actions. Let's talk about just modified actions. Here's these. And I think that can be a very good approach. And so for me, understanding people, the puzzle of the person, understanding like what their strengths are. Oh, this person's great at rules. They don't like policy, which is an incredibly frequent thing. That's because rules, very rigid. Policy has a little bit of bend to it. Or love rules, solid on policy, hate giving feedback and mentoring. That's because rules are rigid, policy has a little bit of flex to it, and mentorship needs to be customized for every person individually. And so they don't like that. They're not comfortable with that level of adaptation. Well, we can look at the rules and policy of it all and talk to them in analogy of, let's create some rules for feedback. Let's create some, what are some rules that judges should follow, right? What are things judges need to do? Those are the rules. What are best practices for judges? That's policy. Okay, let's give you rules, and once I realize somebody's a rules and policy person, I can give them rules and policy for feedback, and they're like, oh, I can learn this. This is just rules and policy. This isn't understanding all of human emotion. That's hard. And so I really like that puzzle. But now that we know that I like that puzzle of mentorship, how can we apply it elsewhere? And I, for a very long time, I struggled with, and I also don't think I have the best leadership and presence. It's something that I have because of my explicit role. I have a lot of explicit authority in this community because I'm in charge of it, and everybody knows that I'm in charge of it because it says so right under my face. But if I didn't have the purple name in Discord or this title under me, far fewer people would listen to me because I am by my nature a quiet person. But realizing that individual connection, identifying with people on an individual level was a strength of mine through mentorship, I'm like, okay, let's apply that to my leadership. The way I lead is by individually connecting with people and figuring out what each person wants and needs from a leader and giving them that. That is a lot more work for me than for people who are who have larger presences, who are louder and more authoritative naturally. They're able to just say, hey, everybody listen to me. I'm in charge. We're going this way. But understanding what somebody is good at can lead you to support their weaknesses by adapting their strength to that weakness. And that's not something that you can really effectively do with one day of observation and feedback. It takes a while to understand where somebody's strong and where somebody's weak. Now, there's also, when you're working with somebody, everybody has a different learning style. That's going to be something that you're going to need to figure out on your own, what works for them, how do they learn. As we were mentioning earlier, some people learn really well from text, some people learn well from video, other people need a person to teach them. Extroverts are silly, I don't understand them. Some people just want to read the CR and don't want lessons. They're just I'm going to cold read the CR cover to cover a dozen times, and when I'm done, I'll know the rules perfectly. That's how I function. Um, that person doesn't need a whole lot of mentoring. You can just hand them a copy of the CR, either printed out or on your phone, and say, good luck, have fun. But if you take that person and try to have lots of like hypothetical conversations, that would be a lot harder to handle. The Amazing Beaver says, hiya. Quick question regarding a possible Thrawn blue-green deck. If one were to have Superlation Technician, would you be able to use Thrawn's when defeated ability on it for double resource? Nope, because it says take this card and put it into your resource. You resolve that one. You could say, yes, I want to use Thrawn's ability to double that trigger. That would be your once per turn activation, effectively. But then it would be like, okay, put this card into play as a resource, and there is no card to put into your resources, so nothing would happen, and it would be a waste of the ability. So you could say yes, but it wouldn't do anything. Similarly, any other card that says when defeated, put me into play as a resource. We're not going to generate like a resource token or a token to represent, like it can't create a new card, so you have just the one that you're operating with. So, figure out your teaching style, figure out their learning style, be friends, just start doing it. Once you've just started mentoring, keep mentoring. Just continue to reach out. It is, especially if you are in a position of either explicit or implicit authority, it is intimidating for people to bother you. Heck, even if you don't have any authority, a lot of people don't like bothering other people. They see themselves, a large number of people, particularly those in the neurodiverse nerdosphere, see themselves and their questions as annoying. This is partially personal experience, but also like this is a conversation I've had many, many, many times where it's like, yeah, when I was a kid, people told me to shut up about my stupid card game when I just wanted to ask questions. Like I'd go and ask my parents and be like, we don't know how your card game works, ask somebody else. Or just, we don't understand, we're not able to engage. And so a lot of people are trained to not ask questions. And so if you as a mentor don't reach out proactively, a lot of people are going to be hesitant to reach out to you. It is something that I always strive to do, is become more accessible. Please, genuinely, if you ever have any question, no question too silly to DM me. Some questions too frustrating to DM me, and I'll just gif them. But the vast majority of the time, like, for the mentees, for the people who have questions, the vast majority of the time, the person who you are thinking about asking a question of, more than happy to answer. And if they're not happy to answer, they'll just ignore it until they are. Like, there will definitely be times where I'm like, oh boy, I'm getting a bunch of notifications on Discord. I'm going to ignore them because I'm watching a TV show, or I just clocked out of work and I just want to relax for the next hour or two, and I'll go back to work at 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. and it'll be fine. And then I am more than happy to answer those questions. But something that you can do to help people feel comfortable messaging you and asking for your help is reaching out to them, being like, hey, how's it going? How are these projects that you're working on? Something that I recommend to everybody, not just judges, not just mentors, but every person who wants to get better at people, is Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I think it does talk about this idea of asking for small favors. People like you more and are more willing to help you if you ask them to do stuff for you. So if you're like, hey, can you go grab me a pen? Or, hey, like, while you're heading back to the stage, can you grab me a water? That implicit, like, this is me quoting, paraphrasing and misquoting from something I read probably close to 7 years ago now. That's just like, hey, I'm showing a weakness. I have a need that I can't meet. This is vulnerability. This is me putting myself in debt to you. can you go do this thing for me? That's what it is on like a subconscious level. Whereas on a conscious level, it's, yeah, this is a nothing task. Let me get you that pen. Let me get you that water. Not a problem, right? And so it just builds your reputation. Like, it's an easy way to earn reputation points, using people's names, asking them to do stuff instead of telling them to do stuff. Please and thank you. And asking them to do small favors for you. These are all ways to earn reputation points, all the way up to exalted status, as far as I can tell. Like, you can get very far just asking people to do small things for you very politely. Headkin says, I used to be that way of not wanting to bother people. Then I just realized that asking for stuff tends to produce results. Yep, absolutely. The number of times, like, this is just something I do. Like, this is a skill, because it is a skill that I've developed through judging, that I've brought to my real life, where it's just like, hey, do you mind, like, throwing that in there? Or, like, hey, can I get an extra bag? Or, like, when I'm flying, I always ask for extra snacks, because those snacks cost the airline 50 cents or whatever. And yeah, I do want an extra set of cookies and another bag of chips, because I'm on a 6-hour flight, and that's all the food I'm eating today. And people will, like, as long as you're polite and respectful, not pushy, people do want to help genuinely. And within the judge community particularly, people want to help. That's why we're judges, because we want the promos and because we want to help people. And for some people, one weighs more than the other. But for a lot of judges, particularly the more engaged judges, they want to help people. And so please do reach out to engaged judges. But also, as an engaged judge, if you have somebody that you want to see grow, proactively reach out to them and encourage them and start those conversations yourself, because sometimes it can be hard for them to start the conversation. Then the last note that I have is this: being a mentor allows you to be more critical of the person that you're working with. I can say not necessarily meaner things to the folks that I am a mentor to or have a long-term relationship with. But I can say things more directly, with less couching. I can say things that are more critical than what other people would be able to say, because they know there's that long-term trust that's built up. Everything I've said in the past has been to help them. And so while they don't like me hearing this thing, everything else I've said has been true, and everything else I've said has been to help them. So maybe this is also true and to help them. Headkin says, it's also to go into my actual job space, basic social engineering, because people naturally want to help other people. Yep, absolutely. Like, there are a lot of books about how to get more out of other people, out of your interactions with other people. And people are generally genuinely good and helpful. Asking somebody to hold the door for you, like, just small things like that, is very impactful, and people are happy to do it if you are kind and polite to them. But going back to that critical feedback, being a mentor can sometimes mean being a conduit for critical feedback. If your mentee screws up, you can be like, hey, heard about that. Do you want me to collect feedback for you? So you can get feedback from a bunch of different perspectives and then, like, distill it into one package so they don't have to hear the same critical feedback 6 times. Or if people don't know the person particularly well, but they're like, oh, yes, this person is Jonah's mentee, rather than going to them and just being like, hi, I'm Scary, I'm going to give you this feedback, I'm going to give it to Jonah, who I know well, and he can deliver it to the mentee. And so having a mentor and being a mentor means that more good critical feedback is delivered and is heard and processed better. Somebody that you've worked with for a long time, you're going to be able to better understand how to give them critical feedback, or they'll better understand how to give you critical feedback because they've done it before. Whereas somebody who just saw you screw up now isn't necessarily going to know, I should strike while the iron's hot before they forget about it, or I should wait until the end of the day so it doesn't set them off for the rest of the day and tilts them, or I should send it in a review, or I shouldn't mention it at all because they're already aware, they've already figured it out. But that just about wraps us up for today. If anybody has any questions, as always, throw them in the chat before I wrap up and hit that stop streaming button. Other than that, on Monday, we have lesson 29, which is on writing reviews. On Thursday, I think I think my plan is lesson 29 is the final level 2 lesson on writing reviews. However, on Thursday, I want to release 2 things. Headkin says you're not going to be in Vegas on Thursday. I'm going to be in Vegas, but so will my phone. And I can access the internet through my phone. So I will prepare the lessons before I leave and then just hit publish on Thursday. But the 2 things that I want to release on Thursday, one, how to write a good endorsement, both for L2s writing endorsements for L1 and for stores writing endorsements for L2 candidates. Endorsement, like the requirements for endorsement are relatively low. I think this person will be good at this level, period. However, that's not a great endorsement. There's some things that you can do to add a lot of value to your endorsements. And so I want to talk about that. The other is I want to talk about just a short video walking through all of the technical steps to advance to level 2. So how do you ensure that your events are being tracked appropriately? How do you ensure that you're getting an endorsement? Make sure that you have that level 1. How to take the test, what to expect on the exam, and just putting that into a short video so that when you finish the L2 lessons, if you're like, okay, how do I get from here taking the lessons to actually taking the exam, have that all in like a quick 5-minute video or something like that. There are a couple processes that still need to be developed and deployed. We're working on systems for folks to submit stuff internally, and so tournament organizers will be able to submit applications for competitive tier status, and then judges who are interested in the level 2 mentor role will be able to submit reviews for evaluation. Felfoxhound says tests can be found on Cascade Games website. Great. Yep. It'll be on nexus.cascadegames.com/exams when the exam is available. The exam will not be available until after I return from the Galactic Championship. I still haven't written the questions for the last couple of lessons because I go through the lesson, get questions from it, put it on the exam, because I want to make sure that there's nothing on the exam that I do not cover in the lessons, and I don't know exactly what words I'm going to use in the lesson until I actually use the lesson. But Monday's writing reviews, Thursday is what steps from here to L2 and how to write an endorsement, both relatively short lessons. And then Molstar 562 has a question about Cheer at Imwe. Deployed on the field, has taken 5 damage. My opponent has Mother Taliesin in the leader zone and uses their action to use the force and give Cheer -1/-1. Would that defeat the Cheer, or would he still be okay on the field? As McFerguson says, Cheer is still alive. He is not defeated due to no remaining HP, regardless of what that HP number is. Yep, even if he has 0 HP, even if he has negative 500 HP, not defeated during the action phase due to having no remaining HP. He does eventually die. He's not actually immortal, but we can work on that. Yeah, if like that damage persists. So the language on Chirrut is during the action phase, this unit is defeated by having no remaining HP. So the card doesn't care about damage. And remaining HP is your HP minus damage. And so if you have 0 remaining HP, that's what defeats a unit. Chirrut, during the action phase, essentially ignores how much HP he has, whether it is remaining HP from damage or total HP. Because your total HP is what determines whether or not you are defeated. It is your remaining HP. Felfox Sound says exams are open book or only apprentice. As McFerguson says, all exams and all of judging is open book. Yep, and level 2 is going to be open book. You can reference the rules documents, the policy documents, both master event document and tournament regulations. You can reference the clarifications pages. You can reference the lessons themselves. I try to make it so that you can't just control F the question and then say, that's the answer in the next sentence. The things that you cannot do on the exam are ask somebody else the question and have them answer it for you. You can't just be like, hey, Jonah, what's the answer to question 22? One, the question order is randomized and every judge gets a different set of questions, so I don't know. And two, that defeats the point of you taking the exam. However, because judging on the floor is open book, but under a time restriction of you want the event to move smoothly, exams are open book and timed. It is possible that long term for higher levels, this is going to be me talking about program philosophy for a minute because I like talking about this. The possibility is that like the level 4 and 5 exam is just take the level 3 exam but do it perfect, and it might be that like the level 5 exam is take the level 3 exam, do it perfect, closed book, because there's an expectation for the highest level of judges to be able to answer any fundamental question without having to look it up. Corner cases, I'm not so much worried about. It might be like there's this section, like there's the fundamental section that you have to do perfect closed book, and then there is the corner cases section where it's like open book 80 or 90%. Just demonstrate that you know these weird things that should really never come up, but sometimes two judges have an argument and they're like, okay, well, what if we added this card and make things real hard? Hedkin says, feels like level 5 might be an in-person thing. Oh boy. So, for those who aren't familiar, we're going to talk about another game for a while that is... The people who judge that game take judging far too seriously. And I am talking about myself and Magic the Gathering. And for the Magic level 3 level was essentially very similar to like somewhere between level 4 and 5 for Star Wars Unlimited. For that process, I wrote something like a 9 or 10 page self-review multiple times. I wrote answers to pre-event interview questions. So they gave me like 9 questions, answered those questions in a text document. They gave me another like dozen questions. I answered those. And so by the end, I think they had like a 30-page document of questions and answers tailored to me. I had, over the course of my advancement process, 4 recommendation reviews, the shortest of which was like 4 pages and the longest of which was like 11. So that's like another 30 pages written about me by other people. I had to take practice exams before I could take the actual exam. I took the actual exam. I think I only needed to take it once because I went through after I failed the interview process, I was able to get back to it quickly enough that I didn't need to take the actual exam a second time. However, I ended up taking the practice exam a total of 7 times, and I think failed 3 times. Generally went pass, fail, pass, fail, pass, fail, pass. And I needed that for various certifications. There were some certifications that I needed on the way up. Those are going to be covered by essentially levels in this system. And then I had 2 4-hour interviews with 3 existent level 3 judges. We're not going to be doing that here, but a lot of the elements of that did make me a better judge and elevated my skill. Having 3 judges in the 1% of judging sit down with me for 4 hours to just grill every bad decision I've ever made, run me through no-win scenarios and say, okay, win this one. And I'm like, I can't. And they're like, yes, that's the design. We've designed it so that you can't win. Anyways, figure out how to win. You have 5 minutes. We haven't figured out how to win, and we spent 2 hours making this thing together. Those cumulative 8 hours were some of the most formative hours of my judge career. Also made me cry. I want to avoid the making people cry bit. I do want the very formative experience, and I do want judges who are seen as elite by tournament organizers and other TCG judges. I want to avoid the elitism that comes with that, which is a challenge. But the highest levels, 5 and possibly 4, likely going to have some in-person aspect. Level 3 is probably going to have a little bit more personalization to it. One of the things that I'm expecting for level 3 as a requirement, just for folks who are thinking, so at level 3, I need you to be able to write a good disqualification statement or report. And therefore, there will probably be a requirement for submitting a tournament report, which is a description of events that have occurred. And for level 3, since you're going to be doing more mentoring due to the nature of your role, you're going to have the level 2 mentorship certification. So like level 3 is already going to be a significant step up from level 2. At levels 4 and 5, you're talking more about policy philosophy, program philosophy, logistics, leadership, investigations, diplomacy, team building, evaluation, development of other judges, and knowing rules really well. There are arguments for separating the skills, so you can be like an incredible mentor or somebody who's great at logistics rather than being perfect at everything. I think there is value in saying to get to the highest level, you need to be great at everything, because there's some motivation of let's get you to this point. I also, again, want to say that there aren't going to be many level 5s. I'm expecting not more than like 5 or 10 globally. Because if level 5 is essentially just what you need for a head judge of Galactics, you don't need a huge number. I've also considered not committing one way or the other yet, but I've considered for level 5 more likely and level 4 less likely having that certification expire and needing to re-up so that you can't just coast along. Although there is the idea that like once you get into that class of people, your peers and friends will be like, oh yeah, we'll interview you, and by interview I mean hang out by the pool and drink beers for 2 hours and then say, yeah, you did it. That's also something that I want to avoid. I want to avoid people will over time get implicit authority because of their levels, and I want to avoid cliques and in-groups forming. It is impossible to do. I know that I'm taking on an impossible task. But that's something that I really want to avoid, and having some amount of natural turnover built in is helpful for that. Hedkin says, what is this? The Kobayashi Maru? That's the wrong IP, but yes. And McFerguson says, okay, but can hanging out by the pool and drinking beers be a part of the exam? So, there have been stories where that's happened. One of my advancement panels happened at a barbecue. However, you run a risk there, because if you're like hanging out having fun on the anticipation that the person passes and you'll already be celebrating when they do, if they fail like I did at the party, it ends the party real fast. Hedkin says, is there a Star Wars equivalent of the Kobayashi Maru? There are, yes. God, in Rogue Squadron, the first book by Kevin J. Anderson, there is a simulation where you're defending a medical frigate. I'm pretty sure it was Rogue Squadron. It might have been Wraith Squadron. I'm 95% sure. Well, there's one in Rogue Squadron, which is defending the medical frigate. I think Bror, Jace, and Corran Horn get like the 2 top scores on that. There's a similar like scenario based off of the real experiences of Mindanos in, I want to say, it might honestly be book 2 of Wraith Squadron. which is Iron Fist. It might be book 1, might be book 2, but it's based on his experience where he lost his entire squad. But Cascade says, I strongly agree that any role with a specified number of members should require regular, open to all assessment. So, there won't, I'm not going to specify there isn't a quota to hit for any judge level. At least that is my current plan. It's not going to be like there are exactly 5 level 5s globally, period, no questions asked. It will be, what are the needs of organized play? Because one of the prerequisites for level 5 will likely be head judge of regionals or appeals judge on galactics or something along those lines. And there are only so many people who can take on that role in a given year. And so there are only so many people who could potentially advance, especially given that you're going to want to have some number of rocks in that role, people who already know what they're doing. And so the number of people who can advance is naturally going to be very small. And tournament organizers are going to very frequently want to give opportunities, like while they will want to give opportunities to new people, see also training replacements, they're also going to want to pick people that they know they can trust and rely on, which will be existent high-level judges. So while I don't plan on there being a quota, there will be a cap on that. It's not everybody, because also those are going to be relatively high-skilled jobs. As to the other part, open assessment is not something I agree with for a couple of reasons. One, the level of assessment that I am imagining can get very personal. And so I don't think that other members of the community are entitled to the personal evaluation of any candidate. Let's say, for example, we decide, there's somebody who is a level 5 and they just have an off year, and it's like, hey, you haven't been able to keep up with the rules because of stuff going on in your life that you talk about in your self-evaluations that we talk about in our evaluations of you. Let's say somebody is struggling with depression and they're not able to keep up. That's not something that we're going to post publicly. Or we decline somebody one year but accept them the next. Being like, yeah, this person has managed to get a hold on their depression. That's not something that we're going to say publicly. That's absolutely not fair to the person. There is some value in layers of transparency, but generally people are, in my opinion, are not entitled to analysis of other people. I think this is a tricky balance to strike. You definitely see some challenges in a global program like this because events aren't evenly distributed. There was and again, I have seen programs where we're like, yep, we have our level system, and yep, congratulations, you're a level 4. However, we're only promoting you because your region needs a level 4 and you're better than everybody else. But you don't meet the standards of a German level 4, which is where our events primarily held, like our French and German L4s, because that's where the events are primarily held in Europe, and you're not like a West Coast L4 in the United States because that's where Galactics is every year or whatever, right? Trying to there's a lot of danger in promoting people. There's a lot of danger and unfair feelings because people do want it to be a meritocracy. People do they don't want to. They just do feel entitled to every level. And that's not how this works. However, that is also something that I am conscious of, as I have seen it happen in several judge programs now and several iterations of the same judge program. And I'm going to strive to continue to make things as fair as possible. However, like, the distribution of events is not something that we can control. And I want to make it so that everybody who deserves a certain level can get there. But I also don't want to make it so that if you're in an area that doesn't have events, I won't just say, oh, yeah, you don't need to do events. I know you'll be fine. Because that is just, like, that is an unfair exception. Because, like, me just being like, I know you, therefore you get a pass, wildly unfair. So that's a bit of complex thoughts. I haven't scrolled down to see if there's a response because I was just reading that and just talking. Wolfstride562 to say, to use what you said about being a mentor and the fear of bringing someone up to replace you, I believe that we should want to build people up and not tear them down, build a stronger bond with others and support each other. But I have seen that in some judge programs, not saying what one, and judges were very much in the mindset of, I don't want to help you because you'll try to take my place. Yeah. I mean, this is also something that happens when judging becomes more of a job and less of a hobby. Very early on in a judge program, it's very easy for judging to just be a hobby, something you do for fun, a way to, like, make money and go to large events or break even instead of lose money. Yeah, I'm not making a ton flight. Like, when I flew to Milan and Liverpool, I wasn't up a lot of money. I flew to Europe and then spent a week there. However, if I'd done that and played, I would have been absolutely in the red, right? I would have lost so much more. When it becomes something where there's, like, imagine a world where there is a sector qualifier 40 weekends out of the year somewhere on the planet, and there's another 20 events hosted by independent tournament organizers throughout the year, plus 5 galactic championships or equivalent in scale and competitiveness per year. You're now looking at like 65, 70 huge events. And at that point, somebody can turn it into their job, turn it into their livelihood, and when it becomes your livelihood, it becomes a lot harder to accept somebody else taking your role. There will always be limited roles. Tournament organizers are incentivized to have a core group so that they know they have a group that can function well, but also bring in new blood regularly so that if somebody does need to step away or step down, they have a replacement ready. There is some incentive to have some churn for organizations. I know that there's like the 80-20 rule where like you just chop the bottom 20% and replace them every year, which is, I think, a terrible business practice rather than trying to develop those people. But having some amount of churn, some amount of new folks means that you can find new gems and elevate them and overall elevate your staff quality. But that means you're not caring about independent people. Cascade 2244 says open to all isn't open to all that they're qualified. Yeah. That's like being like, yes, these people are qualified, and like talking about the generalities of what the exam is. So like some number of open response questions that were evaluated by peers might be something that happens. We're obviously not, like, we wouldn't share the questions on the exam because if they're shared, people could prepare in unfair ways. Also going to throw out from Cascade 2244, definitely not fair that X judge at Galactic Championship is a qualification if only US judges are allowed to work the Galactic Championship. So here's the thing. The levels are based on need, right? And right now, the definition of level 5, like, level 5 is head judge Galactics, head judge regionals, I think. I'm not sure exactly how. I think 5 might just be head judge Galactics and 4 is head judge. No, I think 4 is like head judge sectors, roughly. It's like 400 to 800 players is L4, 800 plus is L5. But you are correct that it is not fair. It is not equal to say you have to be able to judge this event in order to get this number next to your name. However, if what we're saying is at this level you can head judge this thing, part of that process, I think, almost definitionally, like, we need to see that you can do the thing, right? We need to see that you can be head judge at regionals or galactics, if that's the level, right? Like, if the goal is you can head judge a 800 plus player event, I need to see you do that. If you head judge a 600 player event a couple times, I can be like, yeah, I think you could probably head judge an 800 player event, but 800 players might be too many for you. You might not be able to handle a staff of that size. And so the requirements will be do the thing that the level is for. Something that I get frequently is somebody's like, hey, I want to become a level 1 judge, but there aren't any stores that run Star Wars Unlimited near me. What can I do? And it's like, well, this isn't like a fun thing to say. This doesn't bring me joy to say. But if there aren't stores that are running Star Wars Unlimited, if you have the certification, you will not be able to use it because there aren't stores that are running Star Wars Unlimited. Similarly, if you're not able to work an event to earn a certification that is only for that event, that certification won't mean anything in that way. Now, there might be, like, if there are external perks, like if there are other things, like if at some point we create like a group of experts who report, like, who chat about policy and give like condensed feedback on, like, this is our experience at large tournaments, that doesn't necessarily have to be level based. But yeah, I agree that like it would not be fair, but also like the requirement of like requiring someone to work sectors or regionals is not fair to everybody who's not able to work a European or US event because they just, for now at least, don't exist outside those areas. If somebody wants to work like wants level 2 and their area doesn't have any competitive events, they're not going to be able to get level 2. And agree that it's not fair, but also creating a system where you're not, like, your level doesn't mean anything because you haven't actually been genuinely tested and because you're not using it, I think does to some degree undermine the system as a whole. However, there is merit to like recognizing people's skill. It's a complex thing, and thankfully we're some distance away from 4 and 5. And furthermore, anything I do, any structures that we create are not permanent. It's not that we're experimental and we're just like, yeah, we're going to just throw stuff against the wall and see what sticks. We're going to, using our years of experience across many judge programs and the inside members of the community, figure out what we think is best, build that, and then say, okay, this is where the pain points are. Let's try and address those. All right. We're slowly scrolling through chat and just talking about this, and like we're generally done with the mentorship talk. I'm more than happy to answer questions about that, but we're going to just keep on chatting about program construction because I love it. Headkin asks, I guess on the flip side of this, what is in place to prevent there being a good old boys club at level 4 and 5? Me is the answer. I don't like that answer. The idea would be that there are primarily objective and rubric-driven decisions. However, as the skills become more subjective and less objective, where it's like, how good are you at team building and mentoring? Like, there isn't it is very hard to write an objective exam on social behavior, right? Like, if I'm like, okay, like I can give you an investigation scenario and evaluate you by watching you handle investigations, right? But there isn't a pass-fail on investigations. I mean, if you don't DQ somebody who said, I cheated, I did it on purpose, you caught me, and you're like, I don't think you knew what you were doing, I'm going to let you go. And they're like, no, here's the rule that I broke, and here's why I broke it to gain advantage. Yeah, that's a fail. But the higher level skills are generally more subjective, and so they need to be graded, like, it's subjective based on a rubric as opposed to objective, you know how triggers work, right? And so I will do everything in my power to make sure that it is not just a click. However, there's this thing that happens where cliques will form naturally, right? Like, we promote a bunch of people to L4, L5. We do a great job. It's an incredibly diverse group all across the globe, all sorts of backgrounds, somebody from every different TCG that's ever existed. We got people from the Decipher CCG, we got people from Destiny, from Pokemon, from Yu-Gi-Oh!, from Flesh and Blood, from Magic, from One Piece, from Lorcana, from Pokemon, from universes. We got people from everywhere. Everybody gets promoted, beautifully equal sort of thing. And then they all start working together a whole bunch because they're the head judge and the 3 assistant head judges, or they use the other high-level judges as their team leads on these high-stress events, because these are the people who are the best at the job. And because they work together more, they have more conversations outside of events, or they have more pre-event conversations and post-event conversations. They give each other feedback more. Their shifts end at the same time because they have longer shifts because they're in leadership roles, and so they grab dinner together. They know each other a little bit better, and so they hang out outside of events more, and then they become friends, and then a clique is formed despite starting from... And they're like, these other people are very good, smart judges. They like the same things, and they're good at their job. I can't not like them. We're now friends. And they'll still have their own friend groups, but now there will be a natural power. Like, there will be people will become friends with each other if you just throw them together for long enough, and if they're nice people and have common interests. And that's kind of what we're, like, one of the things that we select for in judging is you're a good person who really cares about this. And you throw enough of those people in a room, you're generally going to get some amount of friendship. Now, having forced turnover is one way to prevent legacy clubs and that sort of thing, right? To prevent cliques. The other thing that you can do, which is not my favorite, is just create a parliamentary system. Just have a bunch of different cliques. And so it's not just one group has all the power, but if you have 5 different cliques, if you have... This is better than having one clique where it is Jonah and Jonah's friends. That would be terrible. I don't want leadership to be Jonah and Jonah's friends. I want, let me rephrase. I want to be friends with everybody in leadership, but I don't want it to be a prerequisite to be my friend to get in. That would be terrible, right? I do want everybody to get in and then become my friend afterwards. But we could have East Coast favoritism clique, the Texan clique, the West Coast clique, the UK clique, the French clique, the Italian clique, the Asian clique, and the Oceania clique, and just be like, there are 7 different groups here representing pretty much every major geo-region, and they bring their own people up, even though the other groups are like, I don't know if that person's good enough, but they're all good enough. Like having a parliamentary system of cliques has some natural checks and balances. That's better than a single clique. That's better than absolute power. But it's worse than having no cliques. And I don't have a solution to cliques. I don't have a solution to social clustering, unfortunately. I can't make people... I can't change that. But it is something that I am aware of, and something that I want to avoid. And I also want to avoid this becoming a cult of personality, particularly with me at the head. I also don't want to become a cult of personality with any other individual at the head. I want it to be I want as many people as possible to find their best place in the program. Headkin says, hope Galactic Championships get expanded out to other regions. Absolutely, I would love to do that. Cascade 2244 says, yeah, a US L4 needs to be equal to a EU L4, and they both need the same opportunities, but that's not going to happen. I think we can get relatively close, US and EU, because they are seeing the same opportunities, at least for now, with regard to like sectors and regionals, excluding Galactics. Both have a number of large cons, both have sectors and regionals, and so we can get folks to that level, like everywhere from L1 up to head judge of sectors or regionals fairly easily. In fact, up to now, I think the largest event and maybe the third largest event were both held in Europe, with Lille being the largest, and I think Milan was the third largest, coming in only after the Minneapolis regionals. I think it was larger than either of the US sectors. I'm not sure. But, like, while we may, like, unless, I, again, don't know the plan for Galactics, I wouldn't be surprised if Galactics started to move. I also wouldn't be surprised, would be disappointed, if Galactics was in Vegas every year. That might happen. I wouldn't be delighted by it. I don't love Vegas. If it happened in, like, Massachusetts every year, that's a different story. But that's just bias. That's the East Coast bias, right? I would love to see Galactics move. I would love to see Galactics in Europe. I'd love to see Galactics in Asia. But outside of Europe and the US, you have planetary qualifiers in Asia, in China and Taiwan. You have planetary qualifiers in Brazil and I think in Chile. I'm pretty sure there were some planetary qualifiers in South Africa. I might be misremembering. There are some in Australia and New Zealand, and those continents don't have access to sectors or regionals. And so those areas, unless somebody travels across continents, it's going to be very hard, if not impossible, for them to get the opportunities to get to the same level as European and American judges, which is challenging, and figuring out ways to support those communities is something that I want to do. Doing so without spending money, really, really hard. But this is Robo Joe says, is there any judge meetup or activity scheduled for Galactic Championship, even for judges who are attending as players? Yep. There is in the Discord. If you go to meetups and travel, search for GC meetup or Galactic Championship meetup. It's one of the top threads. It's going pretty consistently. Thursday night at like 7:15 in the Venetian, there's going to be a meetup for anybody who wants to show up, whether they are on staff or not, whether they are certified or not. Certified judges, whether they're on staff or not, will get promos. Headkin says, if we can get at least 3 sectors per region per set, that will be a great step in the right direction. Define region. Are the 2 regions the United States and Europe? Because like Canada, Mexico, and several other continents have things that they would like to say about those regions. It's real tough. Cascade 2244 says L5 needs breaks if it requires working at Galactic Championship in the US, and then suddenly Galactics happens in EU, and there haven't been any L5s because no one has been able to. Yeah. I mean, so I think it might be like there's, as you're seeing this year, hi, I'm an L1 and I'm going to be the head judge of the Galactic Championship. The levels are recommendations for tournament organizers, not hard and fast rules unless FFG says so. And while they're saying, like, use a level 1 for planetary qualifiers for now, and by Shadows or Secrets of Power, I believe it will be require level 2 as head judge, require level 1 for floor judge. And then I hope by maybe set 7, it's level 3. Like level 3 and 2 for head judge and floor judge. Like, FFG is the publisher and tournament organizer can say, this is what we want. I wouldn't be surprised. Like, the way I would do it is for, like, if it's like this is again pure speculation, 3 years of US Galactics, and then we get our first EU Galactics, it'd be like, okay, the head judge is European, 2 of the appeals judges or assistant head judges are US because they've had this experience before and they can bring that knowledge and experience. The other 2 assistant head judges are EU. And it may be that it's like, hey, lean on your assistant head judges more than normal because like the way coverage works here is different or whatever. They've had this experience before and you have that recommendation from the tournament organizer. But I do think that there is a lot of value in ensuring global representation. McFerguson says, does the webpage need to be updated? Yeah, I don't know what webpage you're talking about, but yes. It sounds like being head judge for sectors on there is L5 required, so how would one get experience for head judge of sectors if you need to be L5 for it? I know vaguely what page you're talking. It's one of my resource pages. Levels? Yeah. So these numbers I think were based on these levels were based on speculation more so than reality. The expectation was that sectors would be a little bit larger than they were. Regionals also larger as well. I think you'll also note that planetary qualifiers are listed as 64 to 128 players, and local competitive events up to 64 players are listed as L2, right? And so I need to go through and redefine things to be just strictly based on attendance, with an exception probably for the Galactic Championship, because even if that's like a 200-player event or something along those lines, or a 50-player event or a 16-player event, you're not going to be like, oh, Galactics is a 16-player event, we'll put an L2 in charge of that. No, you want your best judges on that. But from 128 up to, I think L3 can probably handle up to about 200-ish players. L4 goes from 200 to 600, 800, which is rough. In that range is where sectors are now. And the prerequisites for advancement would likely be an appeals judge in this role, right? So for L5, it would be, it's not be head judge of regionals or galactics. It would be assistant head judge for regionals or galactics as a prerequisite for L5. And then now you have L5, you can actually be in charge of the whole thing. And so the prerequisites are as close to putting you in charge as you can. The expectation for level 3 won't be head judge planetary qualifier, because after it's been out for a while, in order to head judge a planetary qualifier, you will need to already be L3, and we're not going to do the chicken egg thing, but it'll be work several large competitive events, be a team lead at least some number of events, you understand all the roles. Great. Now, if we can put together all the components. So yeah, that page is out of date. There's so many pages that are out of date. All right. I think I'm catching up. Hedkin says, going to have to implement a representative democracy. Maybe? I don't think so. We'll figure something out. Cascade 2244 says, regarding intent versus action, 100%. This is something that I say even about the judge program's promises. Don't trust us until we've done it. Our word is, I like to think that our word is good and valued and trusted. But if it's something that we haven't done before, or if we're saying we're going to do it better, hold us to it. Trust but verify. Cascade 2244, Galactic Championship, Lille, Minneapolis, Milan is currently the top 4, and Galactics hasn't happened yet, so that's my defense. Yeah, I would love sectors somewhere outside of the United States and Europe. I think it's highly unlikely, given that there are a total of 12 planetary qualifiers outside, and so like I don't know if there's enough of a player base outside of like North America and Europe. But it like I mean subsidized vacation to like Japan or to Taiwan or to Australia, like if you can get me to New Zealand, that's genuinely a reason why I've considered judging more Flesh and Blood, because they have events in New Zealand very frequently, and getting like a subsidized trip to New Zealand would be excellent. I Blame It on Lag asked the question like 10 minutes ago. Just blame it on lag. Oh, is the Judge meetup at Galactics going to be after the training? Yep, it's going to be training for like 4 to 7, short break, 7:15, meetup starts, probably in the same room that training happens. And then I'll just keep on talking to people as long as I can talk to people. Headkin says region being how they are set up on the PQ list. That's going from 3 sectors, 4 sectors, 2 regionals, to like 18 sectors would be a big jump. And McFerguson says, catching up to live time, the chicken and egg problem is kind of what's on the webpage right now, so that's what I was asking. Yeah. That's something that I need to, like, I updated that page a little bit for level 2 when I was starting the level 2 process. Levels 3, 4, and 5, I have not touched those definitions or really worked on any of it. Like, I've not changed any of the public-facing things. As somebody else pointed out, like, the roadmap hasn't been changed since, August. It's been a very long time since I've, like, touched the roadmap. There's a lot of stuff that's out of date, and I just hope that nobody looks at it regularly. But I'll update it eventually. Alrighty, that was like 50 minutes talking about program construction philosophy for high judge levels, which McFerguson says, I look at all of the pages regularly, Jonah. Well, McFerguson, the pages don't change. You don't have to look at them regularly. I do appreciate that you look at them regularly, but they don't change. I don't change that. They're the same thing. Other than, like, the clarifications page. And that one I don't update. Somebody else updates that. Thank you for that. But unless anybody has any last-minute questions, wants to put me on another 50-minute tangent, feel free to throw them at me. Sometimes things change quite... I think I generally announce when I make changes, or it's covered. Like, I do sometimes, like, update, like, I delete out-of-date information that I've generally discussed somewhere else. I don't know. Oh, yeah, like, at the bottom, we're talking about, like, our first set of meetups. That's super out-of-date. The meetup schedule, very out-of-date. Yeah, there's a lot to handle there. I Blame It on Lag says EU time zone, so also time to head out. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll see you in a week. A little bit less. Wolfstrider562 says, what kind of bird would be a Jedi or Sith? I think it is relatively undeniable that if you're looking for Sith, for a Sith bird, you need to look no further than a goose. And if you're looking for a Jedi bird, I want to say an owl for a Jedi bird. Cascade2244 says, why do you have multiple Star Destroyer models? Seems very Sith. They're reclaimed. This one here is going to be a Victory 2. What I really need to do is get the front half remodeled in red brick so it can be Booster Tarek's ship, because everybody loves Booster Tarek, and if anybody doesn't love Booster Tarek, you're wrong. The Venator, that's a Republic ship, not Sith at all, totally innocent. And up top, I know it says the Executor on there, but we can pretend that it's the recovered Lusankya that was used against Usain Isard. So all of those are New Republic or Republic ships, not or independent. Wolf Strider 562 says, why all big ships but no Death Star? The Death Star is roughly 10 feet below me, just down there. I didn't want to put it behind me here because I'd be way too likely to bump into it and knock it down. It's also not the most beautiful. Like, these are beautiful, and they also stack very nicely, at least in my opinion. But downstairs is the old UCS Yoda, Death Star 2, the new Millennium Falcon, and the Razor Crest. And then off to the side there, I have the Imperial Shuttle, the Jedi Starfighter, Boba Fett Slave 1, TIE Fighter Snowspeeder, A-Wing, Y-Wing, X-Wing. I have the Interceptor coming to me eventually. And I'm still debating on Jango Fett Slave 1, and then maybe also the AT-AT. Java's Sail Barge doesn't really speak to me. The new, I don't need the new X-Wing. The AT-ST also doesn't really speak to me. Yeah. Cascade 2244 says, Toucan is most Jedi. Prove me wrong. It wields its majestic beak like a lightsaber. Ooh. I might also argue, crows for Jedi. They just seem not like most Jedi, but I don't know. Quinlan Voss is a crow, and I'm correct. All right. That seems like enough for tonight. Thank you all for joining me. Cascade 2244, crows are too half evil. Have you met Quinlan Voss? I haven't actually read the comics or read Dark Disciple, but he dips his toe and his foot and his calf and his whole he's up to his chinny chin chin. I think Quinlan Voss is a crow. And on that note, I'll see y'all on Tuesday for the next broadcast. Have a good one.